The human brain is extremely complex, and today's article will help give you an idea of the scale of how complex just one brain is. So, the science of this article is that scientists find 57,000 cells and 150 million neural connections in an extremely tiny sample of a human brain, 1 cubic millimeter to be precise, has these numbers. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down past the brain imaging images here and talk about what they did. So they took 1 cubic millimeter of brain matter and sliced it into wafers less than 1,000 times thinner than the width of a human hair. Then the researchers took electron microscope images of each one and fed it into a machine learning algorithm that was able to trace the paths of the neurons through other cells and more or less map this out. The images all combined and ended up taking up 1.4 petabytes of data, which is equivalent to about 14,000 4K movies, which is probably about the amount of movies that you can get in 4K period. And they found a lot of interesting things on the data set that's not in textbooks. Very interestingly, they found pyramidal neurons, which have large branches called dendrites protruding from the bases, and they had a curious symmetry with some facing forwards and others backwards. But that's not the spicy thing about this article. So I said it only 1 cubic millimeter, which is like a dropper, like an eyedropper drop of brain. And your brain has, if I'm not mistaken, 1.3 million cubic millimeters of volume, which is huge. And some guy on Reddit did the math on this. Now, before recording, I took a moment to go over this guy's work and check all the math, but it does check out right. So assuming 1 cubic millimeter of human brain, one dropper in a drop, gets you about 1.4 petabytes of data describing that millimeter. Well, the average brain is about 1.3 million cubic millimeters. So if you scaled this up, it would be about 1.82 zettabytes of data. We don't often use this word zettabyte. That's because the entire world's computational data storage is about 64 zettabytes. So one human brain is equal to about 1/32nd of the entire world's data storage. And that is, as this guy pointed out, he almost made a mistake. That's just imaging. That's taking a still shot. That's to get a idea of the structure. If you wanted to fully model how the brain works, you would have to take this 1.82 zettabytes, feed it into some sort of enormous matrix equation or linear algebra equation, right? And you would have to map how each and every single one of these little dots talks to each other, how frequently, what the pulse is, what the strength is, and how they all connect with each other in this multivariable mess. To fully model a brain and recreate it would probably be more than the 64 zettabytes, which is just downright insane and gives you some idea of why scientists are yet to demystify the brain, why we don't fully understand it all. Like 1.82 zettabytes of data just for an image of a brain is probably more processing power than your entire country, unless you live in China or the United States or like maybe Germany or Brazil. There's a couple of big countries that'll have more than this, but still, like a brain is probably more processing information than your entire country has right now with computers, which is just downright insane. And that's just, again, for a still shot, not a predictive modeling of how it works. So very cool article. I was very excited about it, and it really did help me get an idea of the scale of how complex a human brain is. If you've ever believed that investing is just legalized gambling and have been looking for evidence to prove it, then look no further than this study, where the brain activity of professional investors forecast future stock market performance, as in the actual performance of the stock, the study finds. So what they did is they took a whole bunch of different stock investors, typically had about 20 years of experience trading, day trading, something like that, put them in an MRI machine as pictured here to measure a very specific region in the brain associated with subconscious activity, expecting rewards or anticipation of something good happening, right? And then they went and showed these individuals sort of snapshots of a company, which in each case, 5 information screens: the company profile, price graph, fundamentals, relative valuation, and a news item. These were all real and relatively obscure companies from the period of 2000 to 2011. So it's something that they wouldn't have thought about for 15 to 20 years, probably didn't hear of to begin with, and they saw each of them no more than 20 seconds. So you just kind of got to eyeball a couple of pieces of information, and then you had to tell the researchers whether or not that kind of company was going to over or underperform. So what they found while measuring people's brains compared to what the investors said, the investors' logical conscious brain was no better at predicting or forecasting stock performance than 50-50. It was just a total crapshoot. However, their NACC activity, which is the name of the region of the brain, we kind of skipped over that because it wasn't super important. Those activity levels predicted with a 68% accuracy, we'll say 70 for simplicity here, whether a stock would overperform or underperform. They used statistical models like when the NACC level was high, active, energetic, when it was looking at something exciting, that stock in the real world would actually overperform. When it wasn't interested, there was a very good chance that stock would underperform, and it had little to no correlation to the investor's actual predictions based on rubrics and metrics in their conscious brain. So investors' unconscious brains are significantly better than almost any other tool that we've studied at predicting stock performance, which leads evidence to that a huge amount of the stock market is gambling. It's user psychology, just like clicking on YouTube videos, that it has a lot to do with the name of the company, the way the graph looks, a couple of pretty numbers. That's all it takes to get the brain excited. And this is not part of the study. We are off, we'll put the tinfoil hat on. This is my opinion and not something that was part of the video. I suspect the reason for this is that certain numbers and names and colors and attributes and whatever are exciting to brains, and that subconscious bias even creeps into the conscious analysis. So if a particular type of stock looks interesting to the subconscious of investors, it's probably going to get a disproportionate amount of activity regardless of what the actual fundamentals or performance is over time, which I think is fascinating. The FCC is closing a loophole that it left in its own net neutrality order, thus prohibiting internet fast lanes. In case you guys missed it, just a couple of weeks ago, the FCC voted to restore net neutrality in a 3-2 vote. However, they left a loophole or perhaps an unclarified area that they said they would handle on a case-by-case basis, which is that ISPs can charge for fast lanes. Now, they can't restrict data, but you can pay more for faster lanes for your cell phone, for your streaming, gaming, something like that. And a lot of people believe that if there is a fast lane, that means there has to be a slow lane or a slower lane, and it's still a way to discriminate traffic. Well, the FCC took these complaints very seriously, and they decided to amend their approach, and they decided to ditch the case-by-case approach and stated that positive discrimination, which would be fast lanes, would ultimately harm consumers. And they put updated language in the final order, which clearly prohibits ISPs from limiting fast lanes to apps or categories of apps that they select. Under the original plan, there was no way to predict which kinds of fast lanes the FCC might ultimately find to violate the no throttling rule, which would have given ISPs the opportunity to sort of build their own fast and slow lanes. So the FTC decided to shut that down, and the final rule makes clear that the no throttling rule prohibits ISPs from speeding up as well as slowing down certain apps, because speeding up some things is effectively the same as slowing them down. So I gotta say, good on you, FCC. You did a good thing, recognized there was a flaw with it, and then decided to amend your decision or amend your enforcement almost immediately, preventing a problem before it even occurred. So I think that's fantastic. I say good on the FCC, and goodbye to fast lanes. The Satanic Temple is at it again as it announces plans to have its ministers in Oklahoma public schools. And this is a story I absolutely love because the Satanic Temple trolls the devil out of everybody that tries to force religion into schools, no pun intended. But in Oklahoma, they recently passed Senate Bill 36, which would allow for religious chaplains in public schools. And the Satanic Temple planned to have its ministers in Oklahoma public schools. The bill is controversial because there's a separation of church and state issue, and also it does not require the religious chaplains to be mandated reporters. So if you go to the priest in your school and report any type of abuse, they don't have to do anything about it, whereas a normal counselor is a mandated reporter. So what's funny about this is the Satanic Temple says we've publicly confronted hate groups, fought for the abolition of corporal punishment in public schools, applied for equal representation of religious installations. And I'd like to clarify again that the Satanic Temple does not believe in the existence of Satan or even the supernatural at all. They consider themselves to be a religion divorced from superstition, so almost a religion of humanism or science. Well, this went over really well in Oklahoma. I don't know why we have a picture of Ron DeSantis here, but the superintendent of Oklahoma School District says Satanists are not welcome in school, but they are welcome to go to hell. Expanding on this a little further above, Ryan Walters says, in Oklahoma, we have conservative values. President Joe Biden and the National Education Association want Christianity out of the classroom and are advocating for our kids to have zero morality and faith, which is interesting because they only mean a very specific kind of faith, which is exactly what the Satanic Temple is trying to point out here. They're doing a similar thing in Florida, which is why we have the picture of Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis said that they're not a real religious organization and he won't allow them in schools. And now the Satanic Temple disagrees. They have a federal tax-exempt status and are recognized as a religion by the federal government. And they're also recognized as a religion by most states in which they operate in. So the Satanic Temple is going to sue Oklahoma, alleging religious discrimination because they can't have chaplains in schools. And you can see how popular they are there. Just recently, an Oklahoma man was arrested for traveling, I think, to Massachusetts to throw a pipe bomb at the Satanic Temple there. You can actually see him in his little ski mask down there. I'm not going to play the video because technically it's violence. And the whole point of this, again, is the Satanic Temple is really more of a protest organization or like a political religion in that they believe in the separation of church and state. So whenever Oklahoma public schools or, state or federal governments allocate funding for religious organizations, they show up and say, hey, where's mine? If we allow, if we allow Catholic priests in schools to mentor children, why can't I be in school? Why is my religion somehow lesser and different? And they usually sue people, take it through the courts, create a whole bunch of nonsense, and make people like DeSantis look like clowns. Samsung is trying to sell a 114-inch micro LED TV that costs $130,000. This TV is so expensive that if you buy it, you get an $8,000 8K TV for free, a discount on some very fancy speakers, and a stay at a $2,200 a night hotel, specifically this beautiful hotel, this, avant-garde obelisk-looking cyberpunk building in downtown Seoul, Korea. And the TV is designed for the ultra-wealthy, for people whom money is no object. And this is just insane to me. I love how in the image, the red carpet leads into the TV. And I got to tell you, if I'm spending $130,000 on a TV, I had better be able to walk into it like it's a sci-fi movie. So Samsung has been selling these very expensive TVs for a long time. Every year they come up with one that's a couple $100,000 or something like that. They're all micro LED, which provides a superior picture quality, faster response times, more contrast, no burn-in, and a lot of great things, but it is just very, very expensive, right? I guess this has to be for like Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and for Elon or something, because I can't imagine regular people buying this. You could get a Tesla Model S, like a Plaid or something like that for this kind of money. The hotel stay does seem super nice, but LG, not to be outdone, last year LG just launched a $300,000 136-inch micro LED TV. And it just got pricier because you can add extremely luxury speakers on top of that, which is mental. And it goes to show you about the markets that most of us don't even get a chance to participate in. This high-end market is absolutely absurd. For the amount that you could spend to get a TV, you could maybe rent a theater for a year. You could take out a small loan and buy a theater. You could build a home theater. You could buy almost any sort of sports car or performance vehicle or like a Lucid Air Sapphire, electric vehicle, anything for this kind of money, which is insane. And you know what? I bet you dollars to donuts. I bet if I sat down to play Xbox on this monster TV, I bet it has horrific input delay. I bet you anything that I can't game on this. And the response time they're talking about is just the pixel swap response time and not the input delay. So this just blows my mind how, Are there that many rich people? Do rich people really spend a whole like 2 years worth of income on one TV? I guess. Again, still, if I had the money, I would just build a theater room instead of this. It's wild to me. Today I got to film behind the scenes of a new tech startup here in Plano, Texas called Drone Up Delivery, which is a service that for free will deliver anything you want from Walmart straight to your house in about 15 minutes via drone. This is not a sponsored video. I was just very excited because they offered me behind the scenes access to the drone. What you're looking at right now is a 3-foot tall quadcopter drone that can lift about 10 pounds. It's AI controlled, but there's a human on standby just in case something goes awry. Walmart order, they will load it into a little white box, attach the little white box to the drone, and once the pad is cleared, it will take off directly from the Walmart parking lot and begin its journey to your driveway. And I had it delivered to a local park instead of to my house because I don't want you guys trying to find me. So it'll hover at about 80 feet. It'll make sure that the ground is clear and that the box isn't going to drop on anybody. And then after a short delay, the package descends like a spider on a string. It was so much faster than I thought it would be. It'll slow down near the end, and after a few moments, your package is landed. All right, so the Drone Up order has just arrived. And, we got bananas, we got Pringles, we got snacks. But most importantly, in a matter of minutes, my breakfast has arrived. And again, not a sponsored video. It was just something very cool to film and go behind the scenes of. I do a lot of science and technology news coverage here, but it's really fun to get to do a little bit of technology in person.